A U.S. court has found Donald Trump guilty in a hush money trial. After 2 days of deliberations, a 12-member jury pronounced the former U.S. president guilty on all 34 charges. Trump became the first former U.S. president to be declared a convict as he runs for re-election in the November election. The judge has set 11th July as the date of sentencing. It will come just days before the Republican Party officially chooses Trump as its nominee. Now, Trump will not be jailed ahead of the sentencing. Trump has denied wrongdoing. A lawyer representing him said they would appeal as quickly as possible. Meanwhile, Trump expressed outrage at his conviction. He maintained his innocence. Trump's been calling the trial a scam and vowing to appeal against the decision.
This was a disgrace. This was a rigged trial by a conflicted judge who was corrupt. It's a rigged trial, a disgrace. They wouldn't give us a venue change. We were at 5% or 6% in this district, in this area. This was a rigged, disgraceful trial. The real verdict is going to be November 5th by the people. And they know what happened here, and everybody knows what happened here. I'm fighting for our country. I'm fighting for our Constitution. Our whole country is being rigged right now. This was done by the Biden administration in order to wound or hurt an opponent, a political opponent. And I think it's just a disgrace. And we'll keep fighting. We'll fight till the end and we'll win because our country's gone to hell.
Supporters and detractors of Donald Trump took to social media to cheer and jeer the guilty verdict. U.S. President Joe Biden and Vice President Kamala Harris's campaign applauded the unanimous verdict by the jury. But Republicans stood behind their presidential candidate. U.S. Speaker Mike Johnson, a Republican, said on X that Thursday was a shameful day in American history and that this was a purely political exercise, not a legal one. A lawyer, Alvin Bragg, praised the jury and prosecution for their service. In a news conference held just after the verdict, Bragg, who had brought the charges against Trump, thanked the jurors for their fundamental civic duty and the prosecution team for their professionalism.
First and foremost, I want to thank the jury for its service. Jurors perform a fundamental civic duty. Their service is literally the cornerstone of our judicial system. We should all be thankful for the careful attention that this jury paid to the evidence and the law and their time and commitment over these past several weeks.
Tourists and residents of Los Angeles' famed Hollywood Boulevard welcomed the guilty verdict against Trump. But some others said that the verdict will not change how they will vote in November's election.
To be honest, none. I mean, I had a decision made already, and so it doesn't affect me at all. But it just kind of, it reminds us the importance of our judicial system, and everybody should be held accountable to the law. So I think that hopefully that's what worked here.
So a jury in New York found Trump guilty on all 34 charges of falsifying business records on Thursday. Let me unpack it for you. In January 2018, the Wall Street Journal newspaper reported that Trump's then lawyer Michael Cohen made a secret payoff of $130,000 to an adult star, Stephanie Clifford, also known as Stormy Daniels, during the 2016 presidential campaign. But Cohen denied it. He said he paid Daniels using his own money and that he was not directed by Trump's company or campaign to make the payment. Cohen said that Trump never reimbursed him for the payment. Cohen would later contradict both his statements under oath, saying that Trump did in fact direct him to make the payment and reimburse him as well. Manhattan District Attorney's Office alleges that Trump committed a crime by improperly recording the money with which he reimbursed Cohen as legal expenses. And last but not the least, they further accuse him of falsifying the business records to conceal a second crime, a violation of state election law. In total, Trump is accused of 34 counts of falsifying business records in the first degree. But Trump will remain a free man while he awaits sentencing. He could avoid a prison term entirely. Here's what lies ahead for him. First, what happens now? Well, the judge presiding over the case must first approve the verdict and then enter a final judgment, though this is typically a formality. Criminal defendants in New York are typically sentenced within several weeks of conviction, but post-verdict legal wrangling can sometimes lead to months of delays. Lawyers and prosecutors will recommend sentences and then argue over them at Trump's sentencing hearing. Next, will Trump go to prison? Now that is unlikely. It is rare for people with no criminal history who are convicted only of falsification of business records to be sentenced to prison in New York. Punishments like fines or probation are more common. If punished beyond a fine, Trump could be placed under home confinement or subject to a curfew rather than imprisoned. As a former president, he has a lifetime Secret Service detail, and the logistics of keeping him safe behind bars could be complicated. Next, can Trump appeal the conviction? The short answer is yes. Trump is likely to make arguments that the indictment is legally flawed and politically motivated. He is also likely to argue that the judge deprived him of a fair trial by making legal errors. The defense is likely to argue that the charges themselves were legally improper. And finally, could Trump still be president? Again, the answer is yes. The U.S. Constitution only requires that presidents be at least 35 years old and natural-born U.S. citizens who have lived in the country for 14 years. And Mitch McCann has more from New York City.
Today it has been an historic day, not just for Donald Trump, but also for the United States as a nation. Of course, no president before has been charged with a crime, let alone convicted of 34 counts, as we saw Donald Trump today. This grueling trial that lasted 6 weeks and 4 days came to a grinding halt this afternoon when the jury revealed it had reached a verdict, then finding Donald Trump guilty on 34 counts. Now, Donald Trump walked outside of the courtroom after the verdict was read, and this is what he had to say. He said, "This was a disgrace. This was a rigged trial by a conflicted judge who is corrupt. The real verdict is going to be the 5th of November this year." And of course, the 5th of November is the date of the United States presidential election. It'll be Joe Biden, the current president, versus Donald Trump, the former one, who also now happens to be a criminal. He's going to appeal this case. That's his first option. He's going to try and get off these charges, and that could be dragged through the court system for some time. It's very interesting to know that Donald Trump actually can still continue to run for the presidency, and he could become president even if he is convicted of crimes. There is nothing in the United States Constitution that says someone with a conviction cannot run for the White House. In fact, there's only a few things you have to do to be the president, and that is you have to be more than 35 years old, you have to have been born in the United States, and you have had to be living here for the last 14 years. And Donald Trump, of course, meets all those requirements, and there's nothing about a conviction that would stop him from doing that. Of course, he has received a lot of support from millions of voters throughout this cycle. It remains to be seen whether or not a conviction is going to hurt his chances. There are polls that say one thing and different polls that say another, but we'll find out in a few months' time how Donald Trump is going to go. But he's receiving a lot of support from Republicans who are unhappy about this case. The polls here are really close between Donald Trump and Joe Biden, so there are people that have varying opinions on this. I want to share with you the details of one poll that's very interesting from NPR here in the United States. They did a poll that found around 60% of registered voters would not change their vote either way based on a guilty verdict against Donald Trump. So there is some school of thought there that some people simply don't care about what has happened in the court. Now, this is probably going to be the only case that Donald Trump faces this year. He has been facing 4 criminal trials, and this is probably the only one that's going to go ahead or have happened because the other ones are getting delayed in the courts or they've been put in the Supreme Court, a very different issue. So these are probably the only convictions we're going to see against Donald Trump before that November 5 election.
All right, moving on. U.S. President Joe Biden has given permission to Ukraine